Well, we are live. The pre-show, WeatherBrains episode number 508. This is for October 12th, 2015. This is that magical time of the program where we say outrageous things, share boring personal stories, and occasionally humorous anecdotes. And I'm the only guy here. This is kind of creepy. Could this be a one-man show? Can I carry this show for 90 minutes by myself? No. We'll have the others joining us here shortly. Brian Peters is traditionally here with me early, but he is away this week. I don't believe he's going to be on the show. I think Brian is down on the Central Gulf Coast, soaking up the sun, enjoying the surf and the sand, while listening to Jimmy Buffett songs. And boy, am I glad you're here, Rick, because I'm talking to myself.
I was going to say, who are you talking to?
I'm talking to our friends that are watching the pre-show here.
Gotcha.
Brian typically is early, and he's like at the beach, I think, this week. So he's out. And Bill, I got some cryptic email from Bill Murray, said he's taking some client to dinner.
Yeah, he's...
We've all heard that before.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it a word of that. I think he's at Hooters or something. So Bill is out. But next week we all gather together as a family in the weather mecca of the world.
We need to find a way to get Aubrey to come.
Yeah, she's the only cast member that will not be there in Oklahoma City.
Why don't you buy her a ticket?
From tonight.
Make that happen.
Yeah, this time we can figure out something. We have the WeatherBrains corporate jet in the hangar. We'll see if we can run that up there.
The only time we're all in the same place together.
Yeah, I think that's illegal. There's something in the Constitution where we can't do that.
WeatherBrains Constitution?
So just for that show, I think we're going to start at 6:30 that evening.
Yep.
That's what I saw earlier today. Bill said 6:30 to 8, I believe.
Yes, and that's Central Time. So
yeah.
7:30 Eastern. So we'll be on a little early by a couple of hours, and because of the logistics and some other things that are happening out there. But that'll be a lot of fun. So Oklahoma, we are all headed your way, Rick. You might want to dig a hole.
Lock the door.
We're ready. They can handle it, I think.
Yeah, and I wanted to get up there for the broadcasters thing, but I just couldn't make it happen. So I'll be up there Sunday night. I'm gonna try and find Dr. Chuck and see if he'll go to dinner with us Sunday night. That will be that is always an adventure.
Oh yeah, I bet he will.
Yeah, we'll see if we can make that happen. We've had some great meals with Dr. Doswell in the past. And that was a great show last week. I mean, we knew that it was going to be a wild ride, and he didn't disappoint. So
I really hated to miss it. I heard lots of good things about it, though.
It was probably best that you weren't directly there because I don't know if you listened, but we asked him about the performance of the Weather Service and NSSL and SPC and the local offices and
Go ahead.
I was going to say, he's not one to beat around the bush.
No, he's not.
Yeah. Somebody sent me a note, said, was it just a coincidence that Rick wasn't there for Chuck's deal? I said, no, he had some family thing.
No, I was in
Rick's a big boy.
Buffalo, Oklahoma last Monday night doing a tornado safety thing. So,
but look, he mainly ripped the MICs instead of the WCMs. So
good.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Now he was very complimentary of Ken Crawford. I don't know if you ever knew Ken, Rick.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I had to work with him a little bit in the Weather Center, but
yeah. He was a good one. I mean, there was a generation of just great MICs and leaders, but I am a little more optimistic. I think there's a new generation of good leaders you see coming up through the ranks too. Aubrey's working tonight. She's on the snooze. So I think we have one of these talent scouts, not scouts. What do you call them? The ones that come in here and tell you how to, comb your hair and what color ties to wear. And how to talk. What do you? Come on, Aubrey, help me out. What do you call those people?
The consultants.
I think they work for the company, though. I think they're like, they travel from station to station and tell you how to be a TV person.
Ours are the consultants. They're the ones that tell me, Aubrey, I don't like that dress on you.
Well, yeah, it's the same kind of thing, except the difference is that instead of being an outside, external consultant, this is a company person that does this. So,
if they tell you that, Aubrey, ask them if they'd like to wear it. It would be better on them.
What's funny is it's usually the dress or the outfit that I get the most compliments on. So I'll stop wearing it for 6 months, and then I'll start wearing it again, and then all of a sudden oh my gosh, I love that new outfit you got. Yeah.
I don't envy you.
This is a true story. So one time I was at Channel 4 in Dallas, and this guy came through. I want to say he worked for a company called McHugh Hoffman, which I don't think exists anymore. And he told me, James, people really don't care about the weather. The most important thing is the color of those maps. And this guy was being serious. So we changed the colors of these maps from, kind of an earth green to this nasty, dingy-looking brown. And I think the audience numbers tanked as soon as we did that. So, but he actually told me that nobody really cares about the weather.
I'm still stunned that there are no former operational weather people in any that I know of. I just don't know. It's stunning to me.
I think I got bandwidth problems here.
Yeah.
This is not good.
Oh, did I break up?
Either I've got bandwidth problems or Kevin had a bandwidth issue there.
It's sometimes it's here. We have issues here. When I got here, we had a period of time where I had 150 megs symmetrical.
Wow. Would you have fiber?
No, and that hasn't happened since then. So let me try this instead.
Yeah, and I'm I had for a long time, a Wi-Fi network that I built here. I had it up on 5 gigahertz only, did some special things to it, and it worked beautifully. And with this set construction, they ripped it out, and so I'm on the company Wi-Fi, so there's no telling here. Eli, can you hear us?
I can, James. Good evening.
Sound good.
Okay.
You got bandwidth. So I just got a note here from Nate. Says he's out. Some mysterious message here. Who made him? He says helping the missus wrangle kiddos, one of whom is under the weather. Ha ha. So Nate is out, and Bill allegedly is schmoozing some clients. So, and Brian is at the beach. I think everybody's here, which is very interesting, and that means we can actually.
Am I better now? Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.
You are 100% better.
Yeah.
So this is great. So we have, and again, before we start the show, we have Aubrey who's in the studio, and Kevin who's in the studio. We got 2 TV people that are doing their thing.
Aubrey, give James sad puppy dog eyes so he buys you a ticket to come join us next week.
I would love to come and join you guys.
Oh, James, how can you say no to that?
I'm melting. Oh.
But you know what? I already just put in the budget request for next year, so you guys have to come to Virginia.
Where is it, Norfolk?
Yep, and then make a pit stop at my house on the way. We party at Fort Wagler. We all go down together, have a great time at the beach. No Speedos.
No.
Show titles. See, we get the greatest show titles in the pre-show.
No what? I missed it.
No Speedos. I bet you John would look good in a Speedo, Aubrey. with hair like that, the guy would look good. All right. So Eli, he's going to hang up on us. I am so sorry for the foolishness here. So we are about to roll this. So let me get a couple of recorders going. And then we'll start. There's number 1. It's number 2. Hey, it's Johnny Cash Week on Song of the Night. We do a feature on the 10 o'clock news on the live stream on Periscope.
Wow.
On Periscope.
You're running out of songs, huh?
Well, we let the Periscope audience pick the theme for the next week, and they selected Johnny Cash Week. So
Wow.
last week it was songs with a city name in the title. So we had LaGrange by ZZ Top, and goodness, there were some good ones. But all right, let's get this thing going here. We're recording. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains! WeatherBrains is the weekly podcast that is all about the weather. We've been doing this a long time. This is episode number 508 for October 12th, 2015. I love October, my favorite month of the year.
It is fantastic.
Dr. John, how is the fall colors in Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
We are coming along. The days that we've got right now, and I know Aubrey can comment on this as well, a high of 72 and a low of about 40. These are just ideal conditions for bringing out the colors, and they're starting to come out right now.
So when is the peak, John, in your part of Pennsylvania?
Where we are, it's about, I'd say, today's what, the 12th? We've probably got another 10 days.
Wow. Aubrey, how about you in the lovely Shenandoah Valley?
Yeah, the mountains are really peaking right now, and then I think some other parts of the ridge lines will peak next weekend. Our peak is typically around the 25th, so the mountains are actually a little behind this year, but I think the valley should be pretty much right on schedule. Skyline Drive looks to be right on schedule. Beautiful, beautiful time to hit up the national park.
I've seen some images from Vermont that are just stunning. And I happened to be in New England a few years back. We had to go to Boston, and we flew into Manchester, New Hampshire. But boy, the colors were just so good this time of the year. Kevin Selly, you have no trees, you have no colors in Wichita Falls, right? Oh, Kevin. Kevin?
Sorry, I'm here.
There you go.
Here. Sorry. I was multitasking and not very well. I was just saying we have it better than both John and Aubrey, because here in Northwest Texas it's brown all year round. So we get that lovely fall brown 365, 24/7.
Yes, there you go. The lovely brown colors of fall.
So you have brown peepers then.
Yes, brown and dust peepers and mesquite peepers.
But before we go down the tubes here, Rick Smith, by the way, Rick, we missed you last week with Chuck Doswell. Some are asking, did you lay out on purpose, but you actually had an official job going on that night.
I had legitimate reason not to be on, so I heard it was a good show, but yeah, I was talking to our...
Oh, wait, now just to confirm, the legitimate reason was not that Chuck was here.
No. The legitimate reason was 100 fine citizens of Harper County, Oklahoma, who wanted to talk about tornado safety. So had a good time up there. So no, I missed it, but yeah, Chuck's not shy. He'll tell you what he thinks.
I told Rick, he didn't trash the warning coordination meteorologist of the Weather Service. He only trashed the meteorologist in charge. So you were fine. So.
Good.
But Rick, bring in our guest before he totally hangs up and runs.
All right, we are excited to have Eli Jacks with us tonight. Eli did a brief appearance, if you remember the show that we did at the NWA, or the was it AMS in Phoenix.
Right.
We grabbed Eli, unsuspecting, poor guy, just walking through the icebreaker there, and all of a sudden he's on this podcast. So he didn't run away too far, so he said he'd be glad to come back on, so we're glad to have him on tonight, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Eli is the chief of the Fire and Public Weather Services branch of the National Weather Service. He also currently serves as the leader of the Weather Service Training and Professional Development Program. Eli is a graduate of SUNY Stony Brook and has his master's degree from SUNY Albany, and I'm assuming Eli's joining us tonight from somewhere in the D.C. general area. Good evening, Eli. Thanks for being on WeatherBrains.
Hey, good evening, Rick, and good evening, everybody. Yeah, we're here from the brown-treed hills of Leesburg, Virginia, about 15 miles west of Dulles Airport. And just to clarify a few things, you gave me a lot of jobs. Actually, my new job is I'm chief of the Forecast Services Division. We reorganized back here at headquarters, and I did training in the past. So, but I did Fire and Public Weather Services for about 10 years. So it's a pleasure to be with you all. Happy Columbus Day.
Right.
Same to you. I was afraid some of those titles would be wrong, but there are some changes going on. And talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about what your job entails, and maybe touch a little bit on how Weather Service headquarters is in a transition phase right now. There are some changes going on, and kind of some reorganization. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Be glad to. So with the reorganization that happened in April, we now have alignment with our budgets and our functions, so that helps us out a lot. And in my office, which is now called Analyze, Forecast, and Support, led by Andy Stern, I work for Andy as chief of the Forecast Services Division, and there's 11 service programs, everything pretty much that we do for the public that we cover. And so it's a big job. I'm still getting my feet wet. A lot of issues, but it's very exciting.
So you said 11 service areas. That would include things like severe weather, fire weather, winter weather. I mean, like you said, pretty much anything that the public sees that the Weather Service does, you're kind of overseeing that in a way. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Let me rattle off the others for you. We got marine, we got tsunami, we got tropical, we got fire, winter, severe, public, and then we have climate services and water resources. So I think that's 11.
How about locust plagues? Is that on the list too?
Not this year. We'll try for that next year.
Great.
So what do you do in your free time? I mean, goodness, that's a lot. I mean, that's I spent a little bit of time at the regional headquarters, and I just had one or two areas for just a sixth of the country. I mean, that sounds like a monumental task, and I know you got your hands in lots and lots of things that we're going to talk about, but what are the big things going on right now? I know hazard simplification is one of them, but anything other than that that's really taking up your time, or what are the hot topics right now in your world?
Well, luckily I have 5 very capable branch chiefs who are working in the division. So, of course, one of the big things, as you know, Rick, is decision support services. We're trying to train our forecasters in that. We recently had a big workshop, which you're probably aware of, and making sure that the message is conveyed. Weather Ready Nation is what it's all about. We want to make sure people get the message, understand the message, and respond appropriately.
And you mentioned DSS, Decision Support Services. Talk a little bit about how the Weather Service is focusing on that now. People may have heard that term, and there's differing opinions about it. I'm kind of the opinion that we've been doing this. We haven't named it that up until the last few years, but we've been doing supporting decisions for quite some time. What's the focus now? What's decision support all about in terms of what the Weather Service does and what our mission is?
Yeah, well, Rick, you're really absolutely right. We've been doing decision support services a long time. But for a little perspective, I'm also part of a WMO, World Meteorological Organization group that's dealing with impact-based warnings. And one of the things that, or just impact-based services in general, and one of the things that sticks with me is a term from one of the reports, which is, it is not what the weather is going to be, it's what the weather is going to do, and what the impact is going to be. So we're transitioning into a phase where we're interpreting our information, not just putting it out there, throwing it over the fence, and trusting people will know how to use it, but really worrying about how are they going to use it, how is it going to impact them, what decisions are going to be made as a result of our information.
And that is based on the Weather Ready Nation concept, which is another, again, not something brand new as far as the services we're providing, but kind of an umbrella that's encompassing a lot of what we're doing and kind of helping to lead the Weather Service down the road. So I know we'll come back to that decision support services maybe throughout the conversation, but I wanted to jump right into really one of the big things that you're involved in, and there's lots of cool things that have been happening over the last year or two, and there's some cool things coming up in terms of hazard simplification. HazSimp is kind of the short, little Weather Service version of that. But talk a little bit about your involvement in that, where that started, and kind of what is the goal of the Hazard Simplification Project?
Okay, Rick. Well, that may take a little time, but I'm glad to spend it.
Take your time.
So,
Yeah,
so,
just limit your comments to 6 hours. Other than that, you take your time.
The floor is
well,
yours.
I'll be falling over asleep by the time that happens. But anyway, where it all started, well, and by the way, Rick, you asked what do I do in my free time? That's what I've been doing in my free time, and weekends, nights, and stuff. But it's really been a pleasure. It's very exciting. Really, and I think probably all of us share this. We all wanted to be meteorologists since we were 4 years old, and we listen to what people say in supermarket lines, at airports, on golf courses, all the places that I spend some time, and listen to how, and even disc jockeys who are not meteorologists, and listen to how the watch, warning, and advisory terms are misused, mishandled, and mutilated in various ways, shapes, and forms, and most importantly, misunderstood. And so that really had been on my mind for many, many years. But then there was this David Letterman video in 2011 where he kind of lampooned us. It was very well done, and he said, the Weather Service is so advanced it's simple, and he said, a watch warning advisory alert is in effect, and we're just poking fun at all the different terms we used. And so I woke up the next day, and Rick, as you mentioned, I was chief of the Fire and Public Weather Services branch at that time, I woke up and I said, maybe I could actually do something about this, or let's at least test the waters. Can a system that's been in effect for over a generation actually be ripe for change? And so, I talked to my lovely wife Susan the next morning, and I said, "This is kind of crazy, right?" And she said, "Nah, go for it." So I started talking to a few people, and it sort of started snowballing and growing. And now we have this great workshop coming up in a few weeks. And Rick, you're a fantastic facilitator, and boy, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. We'll be training you later this week. Yeah. But let me back up a little bit though. So the way this worked is by around the winter of 2012-13, I think was the year, I did what I'm calling a homegrown experiment. And by homegrown, I mean we sort of did it ourselves without the benefit of social science. And that's something I really want to focus on. Is I'm really pleased to now have that support. Dr. Gina Esco of Eastern Research Group and Linda Girardi and my staff helping me so much with this. But the original homegrown experiment, we picked 23 cities. We developed some automated software, and we actually picked terms that we thought might be better understood, since the watch and warning language both begin with WA, so those are confused just from the get-go. And then you have the term advisory, which means is nothing really very specific. And so we tried to use terms that were actually more like what we are intending. So watch really is to say that there's a potential for some type of event happening. Warning is really, if you're putting out a warning, the presumption I made is that it should be dangerous. If you're putting out a warning, it should be for something dangerous. So we said warning for a dangerous. And the advisory term was we were advising caution. So we actually, an automated offline, didn't affect any services, but we had this website where we, in real time, translated the actual watch, warning, and advisory language to these new terms. We collected feedback, and the feedback was interesting. About 2/3 of the people said, yeah, let's consider change in some way. This is interesting. But then we got into, that's when Dr. Esco and Linda Girardi joined us, and we then held some focus groups, four cities in Anchorage and Houston and Minneapolis and in DC, and I got to sit in on those focus groups for 5 different constituencies. We had emergency managers, we had broadcasters, we went out to the WFO, and we had 2 randomly selected public groups. And we asked them, what do you listen for when hazardous weather is around? And sometimes people said watch, warning, advisory pretty quickly. In other cases, they really didn't. They said, well, my TV beeps, or I hear it from a friend, or I hear it on air. And so, we learned pretty quickly that not everybody understands or follows these watch, warning, advisory terms. But what came out of these focus groups, most interestingly, first of all, is that there is a variety of understanding of the terms, so that is something we have to honor. But also that people just don't understand the advisory term. There was support for a color or a numbering scheme that would be hierarchical instead of what I call orthogonal, where you're trying to express certainty and impact at the same time using these three WAWA terms. And so that was interesting. Then we actually mocked up a few prototypes that we took to Phoenix, where you caught me, Rick, and we went to the people at the AMS, and we had kind of a meteor alarm, a green, yellow, orange, red type of scheme. We had a scheme where we pulled all the hazards into one color. That would be another way, and we just asked people to comment on that. And what was interesting is those prototypes that were represented the most change had the highest support. So that's where we stood up to AMS. I'll take a breath if you want to ask any questions up to that point.
No, you're doing good. Before we get too much deeper, though, I'm just sitting here thinking, what you've done is probably more than was done back in the day of the Weather Bureau, Weather Service, when all this is first being done. Do you have any idea the background of where those terms originally came from? I mean, were they just? I'm getting the sense we didn't do a lot of studies with communication specialists and social scientists. Some weather guy just made them up. I mean, do you know what the background is on those terms, Eli?
Rick, it's interesting that you asked that. I did some digging, and of course, the people who might have known that at the time are no longer around, and I found some stuff, but I really was not able to get to the bottom of it. I suspect it was either the first warning or the first warning-like term was probably either with a hurricane or a tornado threat. I don't recall which, but I think it goes back to the 50s. But I'm not 100% sure. I'd welcome anyone letting me know. I'd love to know what the history is of this.
That's fascinating to me. But yeah, so jump back in, and I know I got to get one of the iPads in Phoenix and take the survey, and Gina's done a lot of work on that, and your whole team. It was really fascinating, and I'm, as a person that works for the Weather Service, I'm glad to see the Weather Service is looking at all available options. I mean, you're doing things. You mentioned meteor alarm. You're looking at things that are being done in other weather agencies around the world, for examples. I mean, we really are looking at what is the best way to do this, and there are examples maybe internationally where people are doing it. There might be ways that they're doing it in other countries that could work here. So you are incorporating that into your surveys and in the prototypes that you're showing people, right?
Before you get too far from the earlier comment, Rick, Eli, can I ask the stuff you did that Rick's mentioning, the iPad and done at AMS, was that all quote unquote weather people, or was that general public as well?
Well, and that's a very good question, Kevin. And that's part of the problem with doing these types of surveys, which are not generalizable. Who's going to be hanging out at AMS? Well, there'll be some public at WeatherFest, but basically we're talking to ourselves, right? And so you have a lot of meteorologists, and not necessarily all from different sectors. And so, Rick, you mentioned about the using meteor alarm, and we have to be a little careful with this here because. There has not been any social science done with regard to meteor alarm as far as I know. I think they're starting that now. And it's not to say that meteor alarm is the perfect system. I could, just off the bat, pick some issues that might come up with it. One of the big things you had asked earlier about one of the items that we're focusing on in the Weather Service, consistency is one of them. Consistency of our gridded products, consistency of our warnings, and with a meteor alarm system, if you're using 4 colors, I would suspect that would not solve the consistency problem necessarily right away. So yes, we're basically what we're going to do in this workshop, and that's the next step. If you'd like me to go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, Eli. So yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been working very, very hard on creating an agenda for this workshop. I'm very excited about it. It's happening the week of October 26th. Unfortunately, there's no one good week, and James, as you probably know, that's sweeps week for the media, so we're a little limited, and the media folks were able to get there, which I'm sorry about, but we'll hit you up later on. But we have a whole bunch of emergency managers. We have a number of social scientists coming. We have a diverse set of WFO staff. from across the country, and we have some of our industry partners coming, and we have created an agenda where, and they're 482, right? Back in Columbus's day, and there is no warning system. Forget about watch warning advisory. And you know, how hard is that for all of us to do? Can you imagine starting from scratch with no watch warning advisory system at all? And what should the words be? Clear the slate. What are the words? That's the focus of the first day. And we're actually going to be having this week some introductory webinars for all of the attendees. And the reason we're doing that is because none of us are going to be standing up there doing death by PowerPoint. This is going to be a highly participatory workshop. We're going to put people in breakout groups right away. We're going to mix people up. There's not going to be one weather service group and one emergency manager group, for example. We're going to mix everybody up into 8 groups. We're going to give them templates. We're going to give the facilitators instructions, Rick, which you'll learn all about pretty soon. And eat your Wheaties, okay? You're going to need to do some work for us. But I really, again, appreciate you doing that. And we're going to ask people to come up with themes, with ideas. We're going to break these into themes, and with up to 4 themes for 8 groups. So there might be up to 32 themes, although actually, confidentially, I doubt it. But you know, themes could be a color scheme. It could be some kind of a matrix approach. It could be a number scheme. It could, you know, I don't know what it's going to be. All the folks at the workshop who are going to come will help us with that. And then we'll go back into plenary, and we're going to sort these themes into what I'm calling super themes, where you know, we're going to gather like ideas and then put people back in their breakout groups and actually develop 8 different prototypes, 1 for each group, that are then going to be briefed out the second day. Gina is going to be providing a cell phone voting opportunity. By the way, she and I will be working closely, and we'll be co-facilitating this workshop. So there'll be cell phone voting on a scale of 1 to 5 from the audience as to whether the prototypes that are developed are actually usable and something that we could move forward with. But we're not going to reveal the voting results just then. We're going to put people back into their breakout groups, and then we're going to tell them to go under the hood. Okay, you've got this prototype. What would it take from a software perspective, dissemination perspective, policy perspective, decision-making perspective for emergency managers? You name it. It could be any one of a number of factors, which we'll be asking people to name. And then they'll come back into plenary and brief that out one at a time. And then we'll vote one more time. And so we're having kind of a tournament approach to this. We're hoping that by the end of the second day, we're going to have 2 to 4, you know, kind of a final 4 approach, a 2 to 4 prototype idea that we can then go further out with and test later. Now, I should point out, no decisions are going to be made at this workshop. There are no preconceived notions going into this workshop. This is going to be the participants' workshop as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know what's going to come out of it, and it's really very exciting from that perspective.
Eli, can I ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, I have to go do my 9 o'clock show, but it sounds really cool and fascinating. The thing that's jumping out of my mind, especially when you talk about colors, is there any way possible that you will ever go to all the broadcasters and say, these are the colors for X, Y, and Z, and have them fall in line?
Well, that's a great question, Kevin. You know, and I don't think it's going to be a matter of us telling them. What I would like to see is us all coming together and agreeing as a community,
right.
As an enterprise, and not only as a United States enterprise.
Uh-oh. I think Eli just hung up on us.
I think someone at Sinclair just cut him off because they
They're talking about TV stuff, and
they're just getting to the good stuff.
Yeah, no, I was about to say this is getting good, and then he just faded away. Now, apparently, it's a bandwidth issue with Eli. So, I tell you, go ahead, Kevin.
I got to go do my 9 o'clock show, but I'll hang up and listen later.
What we're going to do here, let's roll Professor Peters and Tony Rice, and we're going to work on getting Eli back. So don't go away. This is getting good as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
Unless you live in an area with high mountains, you've probably never experienced a Chinook. A what? A Chinook is a wind most notable in the northern high plains that brings in drier and warmer weather. One of the main reasons for the weather change is the sloped elevation. When air moves from the higher elevations of the west, it travels downslope as it moves east. With air moving downslope, the temperature and relative humidity of the air will change adiabatically. Sinking air will warm at the dry adiabatic lapse rate. When this warmer air replaces a very cold polar air mass, the temperature increase can be dramatic. Chinook winds do not occur just in the United States, but similar winds in other parts of the world have a variety of names. Even in the United States, another name for the Chinook is snow eater, so dubbed because the warm, dry air quickly melts and evaporates any snow still on the ground. In North America, it is called Chinook because it seemed to the first white settlers encountering the strange wind that it emanated from the territory of the Chinook Indians, and the name stuck. Across the
Hello?
literally meaning the snow eater. In the Andes Mountains of South America, it is known as Zonda. But place, there are tales of unusual weather events. The air at high elevations tends to be dry with low dew point. When air moves downslope, it dries even more as the relative humidity decreases. So as the temperature of the air warms as it travels downslope, the temperature and dew point will get further apart or diverge. This increases the dew point depression, so the relative humidity decreases. One of the most famous Chinooks occurred on January 22nd, 1943 in the Dakotas. The northern and eastern slopes of the Black Hills were at the western edge of an Arctic air mass and under a temperature inversion. A layer of shallow Arctic air hugged the ground from Spearfish to Rapid City. Around 7:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, the temperature in Spearfish was minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit when the Chinook kicked in. Just 2 minutes later, the temperature had risen to 45 degrees above zero. This 49-degree rise in 2 minutes set a world record that is still on the books today. By 9 a.m., the temperature had risen to 54 degrees. But what came suddenly can go away just as suddenly. When the Chinook died down, the temperature plummeted 58 degrees in only 27 minutes. The Chinook is most notable in the winter in the northern high plains, and it presents meteorologists with a very big challenge trying to forecast one of these. Got a weather question? Drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Thanks, Brian, and we'll get to Tony's report in just a second, but I think Eli is back with us. Eli, you back?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, loud and clear, with a bandwidth drop or something. So pick it back. I tell you what, John, why don't you come in and ask your question, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. Eli, so much conversation about the watch, warning, and advisory program process that's in place, and it just raises the question in my mind, is this a fundamentally flawed way of addressing threats for the public? Do we really need to start completely over again with a brand new approach?
Well, and that's what the first 2 days would be about, John. Everything is on the table, and I'll say this up front also, it's still on the table that we don't change at all. We have to give the participants of the workshop and all those who participated in this process the space to actually give us the feedback that we need, and to then go to a generalizable survey next year based on these prototypes to really start answering that question. But I think it's certainly an open question as to whether the system is fundamentally flawed. I think personally there are a lot of things that need to be at least repaired about it. I think we can take a look at what other countries are doing. The main problem, John, that I see with the WAWA system is that, as I said, it's orthogonal. People expect when they hear terms that the first thing they hear is not as bad as the next thing, which is, and the third thing is the worst. In other words, a hierarchical approach. The WAWA system is not that, and we saw it in Snowjam, right? The confusion between going to a watch and an advisory, and was that a downgrade, and just the term confusion itself. So I would certainly think, one emergency manager in a focus group said it, the minute you have to explain a term to the general public, you're lost. It should be intuitive, and I think it's certainly there's certainly room to create that kind of a system, and I am so looking forward to the ideas that we're going to get from our 120 participants in this workshop.
Also seems to me that color can bypass any kind of wording. And so if there were a common conception, a common agreement on what a color scale might be, it doesn't matter what the words are. You know what red means, you know what yellow means, you know what green means.
And that's correct. I mean, everyone knows what a stoplight is, and that's an international convention. Of course, we have to deal with the colorblind, but and by the way, color is a word. The reason I mention color is that in the first 2 days, where we're asking, what are the words? Color is a word. And so I would imagine saying the color or writing down the color graphically, and especially with all the media we have now to do that, would be a way to go. But I want to be a champion for grandma. I keep saying this, okay? I have had people say to me, you know what? We don't have to worry about text anymore. Words are going away. Everything is on my phone. Everything's on my tablet. Everything's graphical. And I would contend that language is always going to be important. And certainly right now it still is. I think if you're hearing the term, you have to understand that term, understand what you're expected to do as a result of that term. So I think language remains very, very important.
I applaud your comment that we have to think about visually impaired and hearing impaired whenever we talk about dissemination of information. So outstanding.
It has to work across all media. And now I'll get really controversial, which is, should this be done across all hazards? Can we make this change for some hazards and not others? My going-in assumption is no. I think that it has to be on the table that there's got to be a way to retain clarity for those products that are already clear, or those hazards that are already clear, but improve for those that are not. I'm just convinced there's a way without losing any of the institutional knowledge that's out there, or the institutional understanding of the language and the terms that we use, because we have to honor that. It's been in effect for my entire life, which is getting to be an increasingly long time, and we just have to honor that this would be a huge change. And by the way, if we were to make a big change, we would have to take a look at how WAWA is institutionalized into decision making, into law, into policy that guides emergency management decisions. We really have to be very careful with this. This is not something that we can do tomorrow. However, one thing that I think, and I'm going to day 3, Rick, if that's all right, and John. Did I answer your question, John? Anything else?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So on day 3, we're doing what I'm calling repair, WAWA repair. So repair would be anything that is still within the context of the WAWA system, but fixes it. So, for example, since advisory is the least understood term, and especially for winter and hydrology products, there are so many different WAWA terms. Is there a way to collapse them into a smaller set that may be better understood? How do we deal with such non-WAWA products, such as hazardous weather outlooks and special weather statements? How do we deal with the criteria issue, where one of the sources of inconsistency between one WFO and another will be the criteria that they may use to issue a winter weather advisory or a winter storm warning? How do we unlock the forecasters so they can focus on impacts and not be so concerned about, did I just hit this threshold or not? So these are things that could just be changed by policy. I recall back, maybe you'll recall, all of you, about 10 years ago, we collapsed a few of the winter product terms. Remember, we used to have heavy snow warning, we used to have sleet advisory and such, and we collapsed those all into the winter weather advisory and the winter storm warning. So we could continue that process. That would be a repair, and that's something that could happen pretty quickly. When we brief this at AMS, at town halls, we hear that. We've been hearing about this for a while. Is there something you could do quickly? So somewhere between doing a wholesale change, which requires really careful study and stepping carefully, but taking a look at these repair options to get us starting down the road to start minimizing the confusion, focusing on impact, giving the forecasters more flexibility, and starting to come together as a community to determine how we can communicate better. And so everyone understands we can give the kind of lead time that we need to give when we know that something big is coming, if it's a snowmageddon or Hurricane Sandy, and take a look at how we can best message that.
Eli, you mentioned a couple of things I was going to touch on there. The all hazards approach. Are we going to also look at that in fire weather and tropical? Hydro is an area where we had some issues with some of the hydro products this past spring with all the flooding that we had. I discovered products I didn't even know we were capable of issuing, for example, and I found myself struggling to even explain some of the entire suite of hydrologic products to the partners in our area. Is that and something's going on with that too. I think there was already a workshop for the flash flood and hydro products. Can you speak a little bit to that? And because I know that's a common theme that I hear in my area, especially, is there are so many different flood advisory, urban and small stream flood advisory, flood warning. A flood warning means 4 different things. How's that being addressed? That's kind of it's not really a completely separate topic, but it kind of is.
Well, it's actually part of the repair process, I think, and it's actually part of both processes. The hydrology products, I think, are really the poster child. There's so many of them. There's over 20. There's got to be a way to trim these down and not have the forecasters worry about which product to issue. Expect the public to understand what we mean among all the different products. This is exactly what I'm hoping is going to come out of this workshop. I mean, I'll be glad to grab these recommendations, and we'll have to, after the workshop, pull them together, report back out on them. I'll have to, report up through senior leadership here, and then we could start perhaps to propose some changes that we would collect comments on, and perhaps make changes by this time next year that are pretty marked. At the same time, while we're doing that, and this is part of our roadmap, is that when we come out with the first 2 days, these bigger, presuming that they're bigger, the big changes that could happen to the Wild West system, we are planning to do a generalizable public survey. When I say generalizable, it's large enough and it crosses across enough demographics so that the results really are meaningful. You're not just listening to the meteorologists or the emergency managers or whomever. It's really a cross-section of the public that you are collecting information from, and you can say, you know what, we got something here, and now we can start test bedding this, and then the real work begins. If you're really changing a system, just say, for example, to something like Meteo Alarm, well, that implies, Rick, as AWIPS changes, dissemination changes. What do we do with VTEC? Think about that. What do we do with our metrics? There are huge questions here that we would have to address. But I think it's well worth looking at, and it's all for the good of the American public. I want everyone to understand when we put out a hazard message. I want everyone to understand what that means.
Well, I'm excited about the workshop, and I was privileged to be invited, and I'm always a little nervous when I open an email that has the word opportunity in the subject line, but Eli sent me one of those, and I said, okay, I'll help, and I'm really looking forward to it. It sounds exciting. It's important work, and it's just cool to see the Weather Service doing something and moving forward and engaging with everybody, with people like Gina, with people like the emergency managers, and all the people who you've invited to this. So we can come back to that workshop if you want to. I had a couple more things on my list, and then anybody else can jump in. We've talked to Lance Rothfuss on the show, and we've talked about facets a lot, and it seems like there's several parallel things going on in the Weather Service. How does HazSimp relate to facets? Are you guys talking to each other? Talk about the relationship between facets and HazSimp.
Oh, that's a softball, Rick. I've known Lance forever. He's a good friend of mine, and we talk often. And as it turns out, HazSimp is directly related to facets. It is the 5th facet, usable output. And so he engaged me very early. I was at the introductory meeting a few years ago where we started setting out a roadmap. And in his plan, he talks about gyre, green, yellow, red, and emergency, which is along the lines of what we're talking about. We talk about the stoplight analogy. One of the questions is, and as you know, Rick, with impact-based warnings, we've been nibbling around the edges for some time to try and say this one is different. whether it's an extreme tornado or an extremely severe thunderstorm, or back here in Washington, Communicated a few years ago, where people were stranded on the George Washington Parkway overnight. To scream the message, this one is different. Does that require an emergency? Well, of course we have that too. We have flood emergencies, we have tornado emergencies. So we have started down this path. So should we institutionalize that, broaden that approach? So I got a little bit on a tangent there, but that's back to Lance's gyre approach. But the bottom line is that his idea is that when you get this probabilistic hazard information out, it has to be expressed in a useful way, and that's where HazSimp comes in.
Okay, that was a softball. Let me try again here with another one. What are your thoughts? Well, what's going on with the SPC outlooks? We went to the 5 levels of the outlooks, and we're starting to work in several of the concepts that you talked about. We're working in colors, we're working in numbers, we're working in words. How is that going? I mean, what kind of feedback have you gotten on the SPC outlook categories, and what are the next steps with that?
Well, not as much of a softball. You're right. I think the feedback has been positive from everything that I've heard. I could go back and check on that some more. But perhaps what you're pointing out, Rick, again, is this what I said, the cornucopia of colors issue, where different centers are approaching the problems of hazard communication in different ways, and each one individually, I think, is completely valid. I mean, the idea of SPC to depict the information. You're talking about going from the 3-level to the 5-level convective outlooks. So it gives a more refined approach to how that's expressed. I think we have to continue collecting feedback on that. But in the long term, part of the challenge with the HazSim project is we have all kinds of stuff that's running out ahead of what we're doing, and how do we pull it all back into a common framework? I think that's a big deal and a big issue, and I don't have an easy answer to that one right now.
Hey, let me ask a question, Eli. When I get an intern in the summer, the first thing I do, I take them to a Walmart in a working class part of the city and try to engage them in conversation about weather with the people in the Walmart. And sometimes I think that's just what we're missing. We gather around and we talk among ourselves, and we do what we think is best. But the truth is, we're anomalies when it comes to the public. Most people don't look like us. They don't think like we do. They don't understand the same things we do. Well, how can this process be taken to the streets, if that makes any sense, into the Targets and Walmarts of the world?
That's a great question, James. And this is where social science comes in, and this is where the generalizable survey comes in. And I think mall intercepts is actually one of the things we've talked about. That we're not yet at that planning phase yet, but whether it's mall intercepts or generalizable surveys that hit every demographic, I absolutely agree with you. We can't just be talking to ourselves about this. If we're going to make a major change like this, we have to make sure it's the right thing to do and that people will understand it and respond to it the way we would think they would need to.
And if after all this research and everything comes back, let's say in 2 or 3 years, it's determined that we need to make some big changes. And again, I don't know if we do. I don't know. I'm like everybody else. My background is physical science. I'm not a behavioral science guy. But if you decide, or the research shows in 3 years, we got to make some big changes, what will be the time frame of making those changes?
Well, that's a really good question. I would like it to be as soon as possible. There are some who say it's going to take a really long time because it's so institutionalized. There's a lot of devil in the details. It's hard for me to say how long it will take until I know what the recommended change is. Once we know what the recommended change is and we can coordinate it and make sure that it's accepted in a generalizable way, it's just a matter of making the technical fixes and then educating and training our forecasters. That's another big deal, is training our own forecasters and how to do it. I think we'd have to crawl, walk, run with this one. But I would like to think this could be done while I'm still working. That's my goal. So James, I want to see this done, and I think a lot of other people do too. Yeah,
and the other big complicating part of this thing is getting the media guys on board. It just seems like in a lot of markets that it's become this mishmash where one station has a color scheme, another station has a color scheme, one station uses the SPC outlooks, another station doesn't. Then you got these proprietary indices. Hopefully during that time frame at the same time, somehow as a weather enterprise we can learn to get along. That makes any sense? I just feel like sometimes we're fighting each other, and to be effective, that's just bad.
Well, I'll say one thing about that is in one of the focus groups, a broadcaster, when we showed them, we did show the meteor alarm system just as an alternative, and that was part of the way we got some feedback. Oh yeah, a hierarchical color system is probably could be one way to go. But one broadcaster said, you know what, if you guys did that, we'd all march behind you, and that was kind of encouraging. I don't know if that's a universally held tenet by everybody, but I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, this is all about being one enterprise together and serving the public, and that's why I'm so excited that this workshop's so interdisciplinary. This is not about the Weather Service directing anything. This is about us getting the feedback from those we serve and those who partner with us, and I would love to see us agree on something that we can all march together with.
That would be nice. And listen, everybody's going to be different for television people. Everybody's going to communicate in a different way, but I just think the basics need to be the same. And again, you guys have to be nice. Eli and Rick, you guys in the government, but in addition to the problems coming from the local guys, you got the Weather Channel and AccuWeather and all these players that just seem to be going their own separate ways. They're walking to the beat of a different drummer, and it just is introducing chaos and confusion. And I want everybody to come hear me speak at the NWA in Oklahoma City a week from tomorrow, because I have some things to say about that, and I'll use that as a tease. So there.
Well, Eli, one other thing I was going to mention, and then John or Kevin's back for a little while here. Maybe he can jump in with something. But any news on impact-based warnings? Anything going on with that? I know it just recently expanded in the southern region to now include all the coastal offices. But any news on that front? Any changes coming, or anything to report on the impact-based warning area?
Well, yeah. So the idea is that as you mentioned, the experiment has now expanded to include all 4 regions and a growing number of sites. The goal is to next year to cover everybody and to go operational with it. Meanwhile, we are continuing some social science research of the public to see how we can continue to improve that. So, yeah, the feedback on that has been quite good.
I'm laughing, Eli, because James's question was exactly what I was going to ask. But in the for-profit sector, you're going to have to bring a number of entities on board to make any kind of change like this work, because we have seen, from my time at the Weather Channel, when the first tornado emergency was issued, to for-profit companies now issuing their own tornado emergencies, which is, to me, it just defies belief. And we also have these companies, these entities now issuing warnings to their clients, saying, come to us. We are going to be on top of this much faster and perhaps more comprehensively than the National Weather Service can be. That's why you need to work with us. Those are going to be some challenges that this approach is going to have to deal with.
And John, I think it's just a matter of us keeping to talk to each other. We all have the same goal. We have the goal to protect the American public and to be a weather-ready nation. As far as I know, all the major private sectors, companies are ambassadors to weather-ready nation. So I think we're all committed to work together on this. And there are challenges in doing that, but I think a lot of stuff's going to come up at this workshop that will be, maybe not what I expected or intended, but there might be some parking lot items that come up that will be worth bringing to our partners meetings that we have twice a year and discussing further.
Well, I agree. Some of the conversations we've had here in Pennsylvania with our integrated weather impacts team is just that. We've brought these various groups together, all with a common goal of securing life and property. And even though we're coming from different sides of the same coin, we're working together, and I think that's the beauty of the workshop that you're trying to organize here.
Well, thanks, John. And everyone I've talked to, from whether it's government or private sector or the emergency managers I've spoken to, no one has yet told me, you're crazy, get off of this, what are you doing? So, I think there is a common level of excitement that this is worth looking at, and that I really think this is something we can all rally around. I mean, I've been accused of being naive, and I guess I am, but I really believe that that if we get momentum going with this and we create things come out of this workshop that are plausible and reasonable, and it's not necessarily rocket science. We just have to get the feedback from the bottom up so that everyone has a stake in it, and then we go market it and we go survey it widely, and then we move forward.
So when does the National Weather Service start naming winter storms, Eli?
Well, it's not our policy to do that, so I'll leave it at that for that, James.
Oh, come on now! You guys who work for NOAA, you're not going to come out and say it.
Well, look. I mean, hurricanes are named by international convention. So that's the first factor, and hurricanes maintain. They're a thing. You can see them on a satellite picture. They pretty much maintain the same characteristics throughout its life cycle. Of course, intensity changes and whatnot. So if you have a winter storm event. Look at the flooding event that just occurred in South Carolina. That was, Joaquin was out there, but this one didn't have a name. It's all about impacts. The focus is on impacts, and that's where I'm going with hazards and simplification. I think that will work itself out. I mean, the idea of naming storms to give social media a hashtag for it, I think is a very laudable idea. The point is we want people to be weather ready, we want people to be aware, and we want people to react. So working through the HAZSIMP program here, if we can come up with ways to do that that don't confuse people and that are clear and articulate and intuitive.
So is it on the table, Eli?
Is what on the table?
The naming of winter storms? Because Dave Clark from the Weather Channel was here a couple weeks ago, and he implied that there were some backroom conversations that were suggesting that may happen someday.
No, our policy is to not name winter storms.
So it's not on the table now.
Not to my knowledge, it's not on the table. That's our policy is to not name winter storms.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay.
But I don't know if you heard last week, Chuck Doswell was on the show. You know Chuck, don't you, Eli?
Yes, I missed the show, but of course I know Chuck. Yeah.
He was. I asked him to grade a lot of players in the Weather Enterprise, and
go back and listen to the program.
I'll do that.
and look, Chuck's one thing about Chuck. He'll tell you what's on his mind. He doesn't care. He's going to tell you what's on his mind, and I'm thankful for people that are like that. He was very complimentary of the guys at SPC, and he was somewhat critical of local weather service offices, especially MICs, not all of them, but some of them. How would you grade the performance of the Weather Service local offices today, the offices like Rick's and the local offices?
Are you asking me that, James?
Yes, I am. I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, our local offices, they're fabulous. There are boots on the ground. They're protecting the public 24 hours a day. We're in some cases not staffed fully as we need to, but that's going to change. But these folks are the most dedicated people in the government. I mean, I'm so proud to be part of the National Weather Service and to serve from headquarters all of the people who are providing the watches, the warnings, whether people understand them or not, and all the decision support services, more importantly, the support to the emergency managers, being on call to go anywhere at any time, our incident meteorologists who go out to fires for 2 weeks at a time and serve as incident teams. I couldn't be prouder of all the people who I work with and who I am privileged to support from headquarters.
And I think it's important that we do acknowledge that the system's not really bad as it is now. We're just looking at making it better because, and I get frustrated like everybody else of high loss of life during high impact severe weather events. But there will be a time to celebrate the countless number of people that are alive today because of the work done by those in the Weather Enterprise, including those at the Weather Service offices. So, Eli, you have to agree. It's not bad here. We're just trying to take something we have now that works and make it work better.
That's what I'm trying to do with my project, and I think there's so many other people across our agency who are doing the same thing.
Yes, because I'm afraid sometimes we get so down on ourselves that we forget that things are, they're very, it's working pretty well. What we're learning, and at least, and I'm just speaking for me, is that I don't have adequate training in certain areas I have to dabble in, like telling people about driving conditions during winter storms. I'm not a road engineer. I'm not so sure I'm qualified to talk about things like that.
And that's
no
not what we do. We're
Right.
not doing that either. That's our policy is to not do that. We are forecasting the conditions that surround the impacts. You know, we're not
Right.
forecasting road conditions or
And you know, years ago, I'm probably the only guy here old enough to remember this. The National Weather Service used to issue a product called a traveler's advisory during winter weather based on road conditions and things. And I think the greatest thing I heard years and years ago, tell them what you know and don't tell them what you don't know. And there's a lot of things I don't know, and I don't need to be dabbling in that. And we have to focus on what we understand and communicate that and the possible impacts and learn more. I guess the bottom line is, as I get older, I've learned there's so much I have to learn.
Interesting perspective, and you know, I agree with you, James. There's so much more science. There's so much more data available to us now, and the models are improving, and we're just focusing on those areas that whether it's decision support services or improving the consistency of our information, where there's a lot of opportunity to link the science and the service and to work together to continue to improve our product. Of course, we're not perfect all the time, but that's what makes our field so exciting. There's always opportunity for improvement.
And where we are, and I think, Rick, you do these integrated warning team meetings, right, in Oklahoma?
Yeah, in a way. We do them a little bit differently, but yeah, we talk to all the partners and try to get everybody together and get on the same page if we can.
And I think that's the other part of this, Eli, is just getting people together and communicating. I think a lot of people maybe don't trust each other within this IWT. The emergency managers don't trust the media people don't trust them, and we don't know each other. And I think the other thing we have to do is establish a line of communication between all of us. So number one, we get to know each other and we understand our needs and what we do, and we can work better together. Up until we started these meetings here, I really didn't know a lot of these people, and I've been here since the Civil War. It's been a very good thing. Been a very good thing. So, and I think that's very helpful in areas that are not doing it. It sure has helped us here.
Yeah, James, we're doing that in Pennsylvania, and we had an outstanding meeting back in June, and just for that very reason. Who are the faces? Let's put the names to the faces. Let's get to know each other. Let's have a level of comfort so that when we need to disseminate this information, we know who we're talking to.
I can tell you, we learned more. We've done a series of media workshops, and we've done some job shadowing with the broadcast meteorologists in our county warning area, and we've learned more from that than anything since I've been here. Just, you know, we think we know how the other side operates. We think we know what goes on in the TV world, and they think they know what goes on in our office, and turns out neither one of us really had a good understanding of what went on, and it's been great. I mean, we've learned a lot. It hasn't fixed all the problems, but we know now more about what the problems are and where they came from. So talking and communicating is the key to all of this.
And one more thing after Eli, we're going to take a break to do Tony's report. The Weather Service, Eli, can now talk directly with the public, primarily with social media, with Facebook and Twitter. I think those are the two platforms the Weather Service uses. How has that changed things in this warning process? In that the Weather Service, they don't need me necessarily. I mean, I understand we're an important part of the process, but they can take a lot of their stuff right to the public. How has that changed the way things are done within the Weather Service and the warning system?
Well, Rick, can I pass that one to you, because you're really the expert. I know you've been a pioneer in this as well. Can you answer that question for us?
Well, I've probably answered it a few times on here, but I mean, I think it's had a big role. But I guess throwing it back to you, I mean, I guess that's one thing in this has-sent process. That's a tool that we didn't used to have. I mean, we used to, all we had was all capital letters, you know, black letters on white paper. Now we have all these other tools, and we can use social media to send pictures and colors and numbers. And I mean, obviously that's on the table, and that's going to be incorporated as we move forward, right? I mean, social media has a part in all of this.
Oh, okay. I think I misunderstood your question. Yeah, absolutely. The whole HASM project has to work across all media, including social media. So 140 characters, etc. So we have to make sure that what's communicated via our flagship means works across every single media, including social media.
Great. Well, let's hold right here and take a quick break for Tony Rice. We're going to come back. If Aubrey, what's your status here? I see Aubrey's video there. You're working the TV shift. Have you got 10 minutes here? Oh,
Yeah,
Aubrey, you're muted. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, it took me a minute to pull it up. Yeah, I think I've got a few minutes. I've got to get a couple graphics ready for a thing in the show, but I think I might have.
Well, if you got a minute, then I got a minute because I would imagine you might have some email for us. One way to find out here.
Letters, we get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
We do have lots of letters, and let me get into the email inbox. I know we have a couple of really good guest suggestions, so first of all, if you, the email's not pulling up. All right, if you would like to send an email, it might get through. Just send it to email@weatherbrains.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We've been getting some really good guest suggestions and some comments in lately, so definitely appreciate you sending those in. And the email is popping up. So let's see.
This is called rearranging the format on the fly here.
On the fly.
I should have warned you this was coming, but I saw you there, and I know how hard it is when you guys have these newscasts you're dealing with. So I thought we'd go for it.
I usually have the email up, and for some reason I must have closed it. I must not have wanted to read my email the rest of the night. Let's see.
We can always fire Aubrey and have Kevin do it. He's an old pro.
I did my time in that job.
You did, Kevin. You can have it back if you want.
It was the worst 4 years of my life.
Oh, this is
and there's your show title.
If this is the way I can contribute, I'm happy to do so. We do have a listener survey response from Matt Winkler. Matt, we appreciate, or Max, I'm sorry, not Matt. Max, let me get it straight. Max, we appreciate it. Let's see, you started around episode 498. Let's see, and I think that was an episode where we had a little bit of a sponsor, so that's not very typical of that. So we appreciate you searching for us on iTunes. So thank you very much for listening, and we hope we've held your attention. And also an email from Terry, who is a longtime fan. His wife even bought him a WeatherBrains T-shirt, so we'll make it short. Dennis Mercio, is it Mercio? Would be a good guest or a good guest panelist for the show. If you could get Doswell on full time, that would be pretty sweet as well. We agree.
We would be kicked off the cable television. I know that.
Thank you for producing WeatherBrains every week. We also got a guest suggestion from Ken Hoagland. Bill Patzard, climatologist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in La Canada, Flintridge, California, saw an LA Times piece in which he was talking about some of the current El Nino, which he claims is rivaling the 97-98 incident, which I think we all have seen at least a couple of articles on that. So thank you again for that guest suggestion, and I think that's all I have for this week.
I'm telling you, Aubrey, you know what? I got to interrupt. If Doswell and I did the show Grumpy Agitated Weather Geeks, it would be the #1 show on TV.
Oh, I agree. I would actually pay for that show, and I don't.
I would pay for that show. I mean,
yeah.
I would be the kind of guy that would go to Patreon or whatever and throw in money for that.
All right,
awesome.
I would watch it live and DVR it.
Rick?
I would watch it live and DVR it at the same time.
Get Chuck to come to dinner with us next week, and we'll have to figure that out.
That's it. We're gonna have a Sunday night dinner session with Chuck and figure out a way to make this happen. This is great.
Okay.
So again, we're gonna. So Aubrey, you're done. So let's take a quick break here for Tony Rice and the astronomy report. We're gonna come back with the weather roundup and picks of the week as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Throughout the month of October, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus will play a sort of shell game in the pre-dawn sky, swapping positions around Mars a little more each morning. This weekend, As Jupiter makes its way higher, it will pass Mars, separated by just about a quarter of a degree in the sky. This is all, of course, because of our perspective looking out across the solar system. The two planets remain separated by 359 million miles, or about 32 light minutes. Elsewhere in the sky, you can help track progress of light pollution in your area. The citizen science project Globe at Night has observers matching what their sky looks like to one of 7 magnitude charts, and also note the amount of cloud cover. The October campaign ends tonight with observations of the constellation Pegasus, and you can contribute. To learn more, submit your observations, or view the results of previous year's campaigns in your area, visit their website at globeatnight.org. The campaign has volunteers looking at the Perseus constellation in the first weeks of November and December. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
We're doing the show here on October 12th, and as we do the show, we actually have some thunderstorms blowing through Nashville, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky. Long little cold front here, so where I am, we're going to see some late-night thunder tonight, and for Aubrey and John, looks like you guys might be getting progressively colder over the next 7 days, huh?
Yeah, it looks like it's a two-front approach. The storms you're talking about, James, they're associated with the frontal system moving through the Tennessee Valley and then through the Midwest. There's a pretty good batch of cold air that's going to follow that, but the real cold stuff, at least seasonably, is up over central Canada right now. So by the time we get to the weekend, we may get close to freezing around here, which would be the coldest temperature so far.
Yeah, it looks like New England's going to be very cold. And Aubrey, you'll feel that too, won't you?
Yeah, I've been last night, actually I think last Friday I mentioned the brief potential that we could see a first frost soon, and then last night and tonight I've been talking about, you know, more likely in the mountains definitely some near freezing temperatures, growing possibilities. So
yep, yeah. And again, this is October. Typically, it's pretty quiet. It's been pretty warm back in the Southwest. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Los Angeles or San Diego had some record heat or some consecutive days of warm days or warm nights. It's been very, very warm back in the Southwest United States, including Southern California. But we're coming up on the winter season here, so Eli,
not here. We tied a record yesterday, 97 yesterday.
Yeah, and Needles, California was 105 today.
Yep.
Wow.
95 on Wednesday.
Man.
So Eli, you're our official government meteorologist here. What's the winter going to be like?
Well, we got El Nino, right? So wet across the south, and maybe we'll get a few good storms to generate. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, I'm speaking to a what is this I'm speaking to? I should know this. I'll figure it out an hour before I go there. Southern Natural Gas Company, which is a large supplier of natural gas in the southern U.S., Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. And they want to know what the winter's going to be like, and I'm going to come in. My big speech consists of 3 words. What 3 words do you think I'll share with them?
I don't know.
Bingo! Exactly. So they'll get their money back. You win a free transcript of the speech. How about that? No, you know, and I've seen already. You got AccuWeather and the Weather Channel, and Joe Bastardi. We need to get Joe Bastardi on here. He's the seasonal guy, and get him to talk about. Joe is hitting snow and cold and unsettled hard for the South, and traditionally, in my experience, in my old age, all of the El Nino winters in the deep South down here have been very wet and stormy, and not that cold. And I'm more concerned about the severe weather season. You go back to the 96, 97 El Nino, you look at the spring of 98, and it was brutal. We had a big, nasty EF5 that killed 34 people in Birmingham, and we haven't had really active storms since 2011. So
February '98 was the outbreak in Florida too. Remember that? There was
like
40 fatalities. I think it was Bad. Pacific
Horrible out
Florida
there.
got nailed.
Isn't it wrong though that the default standard for El Nino now has become 1997? That's what everything is compared to, and every event, as we can all say, is different. But this is the thing: as soon as somebody says El Nino, the default on all the regular general media is to say, "Oh, 97, it's going to be terrible and flooding and mudslides in California and all the associated things with that." But everything's different, right?
Oh,
Yeah, you're right. It's like comparing tornado outbreaks to April 2011. That doesn't make any sense. But I've been through so many of these El Ninos. It does seems to me that every El Nino winter, at least where I am, it tends to be relatively wet and mild. Beyond that, who knows? And maybe
Oh
that's
yeah, no, I agree with that. But the severity and the specifics, it's getting to be almost cliche that we say we go back to 97.
Right. And my position is we don't have that much skill in seasonal outlooks. And Eli, let me ask Eli this since he's here. What is your opinion on seasonal outlooks? For example, NOAA comes out with a hurricane season outlook, I guess in April or sometime. They come out with a winter outlook, and I want to say they come out with a winter outlook next week. What skill level do you think we have at doing this, and what uses these outlooks to the public?
Well, I'm going to leave the specifics of that to the experts who create those forecasts, which I am not. But, I think the point of these forecasts is, for example, it's a 60% chance or 40% chance or equal chances. We tell people what we know. So just because there's a 60% chance of something happening, there's still a 40% chance of it not. So I think we're pretty upfront about the degree of accuracy we have at these forecasts. They're very difficult.
Yeah, and you got every Tom, Dick, and Harry issues these things, and of course every 15-year-old child on Facebook issues these. It's always going to be snow and cold and whatever, and then you've got the clickbait sites, and they're going to put up whatever gets the most clicks. It doesn't matter what the truth is. So sometimes the real message is lost in this noise that's out there. It's horrible. But anyway, let's move along here. We got picks of the week, and I got to wrap the show up on time tonight because I've got to be. We're still in a temporary set here, which means I'm walking 87 miles to the 10 o'clock news set these days. I miss my walk across the hall. We're going to be back in there in like 2 weeks, and it's going to be so marvelous. But this is Picks of the Week, and Eli, we will warn you. We're going to ask you for something weather-related. This can be a website, hardware, software, instruments, just something remotely related to weather. And Kev, what you got for us?
I have something that I saw go by on the Broadcast Meteorologist group. It has little to do with weather other than a picture, but it is a picture of a storm in a rug. You can get anywhere from 3x5 to 8x12, and it's actually kind of cool looking. You go to this site, it's called boldrugs.com. And it's actually kind of pretty. I would actually have that in my home. Somebody posted and said they bought it for their office. So
now wait a minute. So this is a rug with a picture of a thunderstorm.
It's in the chat. It's in the chat. No, it's like it's a scene from space. I just put it in the chat there.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Hang on here. Now you're gonna make me go. Hang on.
I'm looking at it now too.
It's nice. Isn't it? Although
like
someone correctly observed it's a southern hemisphere storm, so probably Al Gore. There you go.
Oh, you're right. It is. Yeah.
So they're the cream and gray. So this is like a satellite picture.
It's a big area rug done in like rug stuff, whatever rugs are made of. There's a better picture of it somewhere. I'll find the better picture in a minute and send it to you.
All right, thank you, Kev. That totally took us down a rat hole. All right, Dr. John.
Oh wait, I just found there's a round one too. See, go down, and you can see it on a floor.
Oh, brother.
The round one's even more appropriate.
What do you got? You got plenty of time to walk to the other side of the building.
Welcome to Rug Brains 101 from Kevin.
Do you see it? It's nice looking.
Bold Rugs, a bold move for your home. Call us now, 1-888-989-RUGS.
No, but scroll down and get the other thumbnails, and you'll see what it looks like on the floor. It's kind of there, the circular one. See the last one.
Oh, yeah, I see.
There, see?
Oh, I want one of those.
See now, see.
Now, I'll admit that's kind of cool.
Okay, see, but you guys didn't trust me. You have to. I have to draw a picture for you.
and for those that are listening, whatever, Kevin, I was a little skeptical there, but I will say that's good. I don't know if my wife would allow this in our house. I have a shirt with radar echoes, and she thinks it looks like somebody barfed on my shirt. She hates that shirt.
I'm going to buy one of these for Eli and send it to him because he was the first one to come to my defense. In fact, we should make this the gift each week for people who come on the show.
Oh, there you go.
So they have a winter storm one? How about a winter storm one?
Well, yeah, maybe so.
All right, Dr. John, what's your pick of the week?
Well, today is the 53rd anniversary of a historic storm to strike the U.S., Columbus Day, 1962. Any ideas?
Well, it could be a hurricane, I guess.
No, it was an extratropical cyclone that began as a typhoon, in fact.
Ooh.
This is the big Columbus Day windstorm that hit the Pacific Northwest, and arguably perhaps the strongest extratropical cyclone to strike the lower 48. Minimum pressure 955. So my pick of the week is actually a look back at this day with a very nice perspective that was written by Wolf Reed, and that is the link that we're going to provide on our website. It's a fantastic event.
Wow.
11 billion board feet of timber lost.
Wow. And this was in 62?
Columbus Day, 1962.
Wow. All right, Rick Smith, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is by Dennis Mercereau, who, if you didn't see Weather Geeks this past Sunday on the Weather Channel, he was a guest on there, and I think we need to get him on our show. He writes for the Vane, and he's got an article that came out today, 5 incredibly dangerous weather myths that people actually believe. And we could add a bunch to this list probably, but there's some good ones on there, so you'll find the link on the show notes on the website.
Has he never been on this show?
I don't think so.
Wow.
WXDAM on Twitter. He's a great guy. Very interesting writer. He does some really, really good work. In fact, somebody sent an email that we ought to get him on the show. So
they did. Yeah, that was a guest suggestion. He just put a book out. So yeah, we need to try to.
I think he's pretty grumpy too. He could come on the Chuck and Maintenance show.
My pick of the week. It's the YouTube video of the water spout that hit that U.S. mail truck on the Sunshine Skyway Bridge down right below St. Petersburg, Florida yesterday. That was nobody was injured, but that was crazy. It wound up being an EF0 tornado inland that caused some minor damage, but nobody was hurt there. All right, Eli, here you go. What's your pick of the week?
All right, I'll give you a tease first. All of you guys know the exact definition of a probability of precipitation, right?
Oh, brother.
No one
all
does.
night. Nobody.
Sorry, we're out of time.
My pick of the week is early release, online release from Weather and Forecasting, Stewart et al., University of Georgia, entitled Through the Eyes of Experts, Meteorologists' Perceptions of Probability of Precipitation. There have been studies that show that not only does the public not really understand what POP means, but even a lot of meteorologists don't. And the meteorologists don't believe that the public understands. So when I'm done with hazard simplification, that's my next project.
You're going to take on the dreaded POP. Yeah, I guarantee if you went to every Weather Service office and every TV station, everybody's going to come up with something different. That is absolutely the case. All right, we got to wrap this up. I got to walk 89 miles to the news studio here. WeatherBrains is on typically every Monday night at 8:30 Central. Now, next week, we are live from the National Weather Association annual meeting in Oklahoma City, and we are coming on 2 hours early, 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. Most people watch it at live.bigbrainsmedia.com, but everybody's going to be together in one place except for Aubrey. It's in the Constitution. We can't have everybody together, so Aubrey's going to stay back. So to get in touch with us, the email address, it's email@weatherbrains.com. Check out the website for show notes, our social media accounts, and everything else. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you in Oklahoma City next week. God bless everybody. So yeah, this is. Bill Murray says he's got some like TV people to kind of. Rick, what do you know about the TV setup? Is it going to be like
Well, he's got the broadcast media students or the journalism college or somebody's going to have cameras set up, so we have a multi-camera setup and
Wow.
good sound and lighting, and we won't know how to act. But,
No, I'll let them.
Aubrey's going to be in this secure, undisclosed location. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. We're putting her in an underground bunker in Nebraska somewhere. So
in case anything, in case
continuity of government.
Who's that
Continuity
group
of WeatherBrains.
demonstrated, you guys, Rick, again, the case they show up again?
Say it again.
In case the weather demonstrators, that church or whatever that showed up at your doorstep.
Westboro Baptist Church
Yeah,
is going to be demonstrating.
In case they show up on Monday and get all of us, Aubrey will be around to.
That's right.
She'll be doing a
That's
one-woman show next week.
All six of them.
Hey, Eli, thank you. You great guest. Loved having you on the show again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for asking me, James.
Thanks, Eli.
Thanks, guys.